Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about the what I recently wrote about in regarding the movie Devil's Advocate. In this scene, Al Pacino was playing the devil. He explains how he makes a case against God by saying that God tends to put the rules in opposition towards each other. And then he goes on to say, for instance, that he wants you to see but don't touch, and wants you to smell but don't taste, and basically based on that he calls God a prankster. And I really wanted to use that as a to explain why the true law in it indeed is a law where things are juxtaposed or where we find pairs of opposites. And everything tends to be organized in terms of pairs of opposites because that's the way reality or the law creates balance in things. It really is a Hegelian, it's based on the principle of Hegel and what we call thesis and antithesis and then synthesis. That there can only be a synthesis, meaning wholeness or balance, if you have a thesis and an antithesis. So reality is basically what Jung called the mechanism of compensation, which is the way the shadow works. Meaning that when we are too much towards one pole, there will always be that compensatory process occurring, which would be the opposite side would then put us in a state of what you would call in Dutch the padstelling, meaning it would stalemate us, it would stop us, compensate us, which is then another way of saying that you get the collision between the thesis and the antithesis. And what results from that is a synthesis, which is another word for wholeness or balance. This is why, indeed, like Pacino says in the movie, God creates opposites. I explained that somewhat in terms of the way Pacino spoke about it, in which I said that you cannot have the cake and eat it. It means that you cannot have both opposites at the same time, because the idea would be then that they would influence each other, they would collide, and then you would get a union of opposites, which is what we call in Jungian psychology, when you touch the shadow, then you get the self, which would be then like the integration or the synergy or the synthesis. When you uphold the two pairs of opposites at the same time without their collision or conflicts, then you don't get the synthesis, then you get what I call the oxymoron, which is like the lie. It's like saying that, I was discussing earlier with someone, it's like saying that you want to be a completely green outfit nation, meaning completely nature friendly, and then still drilling and fracking for gas and oil. The nature, the oxymoron, is where we uphold the opposites, but not in terms of their collision or their confrontation, which would then create that synthesis. And this is what I explain as being the dissociative state, where we uphold both, but in thus a lie, it's like saying frozen fresh, or stand still and still move. And it's really the basis of a kind of a split mind, or what we would call a kind of a schizophrenia, because you would find that in terms of double-binded messages. For instance, telling a stepdaughter to sit on the lap of her stepfather, but not to seduce him. These are like these. It's like, or you get the daughter, the girl, the child that has to live between two parents, and in one house there's total military regime rule, and then in the other house there's totally no laws, no rules. And then this child is in a complete state of confusion, has to split the mind to be able to live in a world that is in complete contradiction. And this is what Orwell called the doublethink. Doublethink is the Orwellian, what Orwell called as being the psychology of this brave new world, meaning that we have these conflicting poles, but not in terms of a collision or a confrontation which leads us to the truth or to a higher synthesis, synergy. This is also where we get the same thought of the idea of double talk, or the double tongue, the forked tongue, which is really, as Pacino playing the devil showed, is that is really the method of the lie. This is not only if you wish, this is not only a lie in terms of an incidental lie. This is an MO. This is a structural way to deceive. And for instance, I once also referred to the oxymoron of peace, war for peace, or for that matter, I call it the private democracy, where private interests basically rule a democracy, which is thus obviously not a democracy anymore. It's very important to understand this, especially because the shift of the cycle of this, what people refer to as the Maya calendar, is really that we're going from Pisces to Aquarius, and Pisces was the stage where we would have this split. In order to become self-conscious, in order to reach that synergy, which is really what the true self is about. But there would obviously be then the danger of splitting into these opposites, but not containing them, but then going into the lie, which would be this oxymoron of the frozen fresh. And that's where, in terms of what I call the Eurobaric cycle, which is really what the Maya calendar is referring to, or what in Pauli's dreams is referred to as the world clock. There would then be a timeline that would go on to go deeper and deeper into the oxymoron or the lie, the split mind. And there would be the other timeline that would move on to understand the Hegelian principle of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Just the way the unconscious works, and that would understand that they would need this unconscious process to reach wholeness. And they would reach to the self. They would reach self, and self would be like the state that the person has to be in to take the next step into Aquarius, which would be then the other timeline, the ascending timeline, while the lie would be the descent